The video call pixelated for a second, and when Danielle's face came back into focus, she was smiling too wide. That plastic smile she used at her PR job when she had to spin bad news into gold. I'd been married to her for 12 years. I knew all her tells. "How's the conference going, honey?" she asked, adjusting her laptop camera. Behind her, our bedroom looked different somehow. Cleaner, like she'd been expecting company. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "Same corporate bullshit, different city," I said, leaning back in my hotel chair. "Kitchen remodeling trends and profit margins. You know how it is." She laughed, but it sounded hollow through the speakers. "Well, I miss you. Can't wait for you to come home tomorrow." That's when I saw them. Just for a split second, as she reached for her water glass, the camera angle shifted. There, beside our king-size bed, sat a pair of men's dress shoes. Expensive ones. Italian leather, probably. Size 10, maybe 11. I wear size 12 work boots. "Eric, you still there?" Danielle's voice snapped me back to the screen. "Yeah, just tired. Long day." I kept my voice steady, casual. "Those new shoes look nice." Her face went blank for a microsecond. "What shoes?" "Never mind. Thought I saw something. Bad connection, I guess." We chatted for another 5 minutes about nothing. Her work, my conference, what to have for dinner when I got back. Normal married couple stuff. But the whole time, those shoes sat in the corner of my mind like a splinter. After we hung up, I sat in that sterile hotel room staring at the wall. 12 years of marriage, 12 years of building a life together, renovating our dream house with my own hands, supporting her career while mine took off. And now some asshole's Italian leather was keeping my side of the bed company. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I planned. The next morning, I called Danielle from the airport. "Hey, honey, change of plans. My flight got moved up. I'll be home by 10, and I'm bringing your parents." "What? My parents? Why?" "Thought we'd surprise you with brunch. Your mom's been asking to see the new kitchen backsplash I installed." The silence stretched long enough that I almost smiled. That's wonderful, Eric. I'll get ready. Don't go to any trouble. We'll pick up bagels on the way." I hung up and called my mother-in-law, Margaret Parker. She answered on the second ring, probably hoping it was Danielle calling to cancel their weekly shopping trip. "Margaret, it's Eric. Want to see your daughter this morning? I'm flying in early and thought we'd surprise her." Margaret Parker lived for two things: showing off her money and meddling in her daughter's life. A surprise visit hit both targets perfectly. By 9:30, I was pulling into my driveway with Margaret and her husband Robert in tow. Margaret clutched a bag of overpriced pastries from the fancy bakery across town, chattering about how wonderful it was that I was being so thoughtful. If only she knew. I used my key, calling out as we entered. "Honey, we're here." The house felt different. Too quiet, too clean. The kind of clean that happens when someone's trying to erase evidence. Danielle appeared at the top of the stairs in her robe, hair wet from a shower. "You're early!" Her voice was pitched too high, stressed. "Traffic was lighter than expected," I lied smoothly. "Come down. Your parents brought those almond croissants you love." While Margaret fussed over Danielle and Robert examined my latest carpentry work, I excused myself to use the bathroom. Our master bathroom still smelled like cologne. Not my cologne. Something expensive and cloying that made my stomach turn. On the counter sat 2 glasses. 2. I picked up the second glass, still damp, and held it up to the light. Lipstick on the rim, but not Danielle's usual shade. This was darker, more dramatic. The kind of lipstick a woman wears when she wants to make an impression. "Eric?" Danielle's voice drifted up from downstairs. "Everything okay up there?" "Just washing my hands," I called back, setting the glass down exactly where I'd found it. Back downstairs, I played the perfect husband, kissed Danielle's cheek, asked about her week, complimented her mother's pastry choice, but I was watching. Always watching. Danielle kept glancing at her phone. Quick, nervous glances when she thought no one was looking. Her fingers twitched like she wanted to text someone but couldn't risk it. After her parents left, promising to call later in the week, Danielle and I were finally alone. She busied herself cleaning up the breakfast dishes, movement sharp and efficient. "So," I said, leaning against the kitchen counter I'd built with my own hands. "How was your week, really?" "Fine. Quiet. Boring without you here." She didn't meet my eyes. "Boring, huh?" I walked to the sink, picked up the dish towel. "That's funny. House doesn't feel boring. Feels like it had some excitement." Now she looked at me, eyes narrowing. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just an observation." I dried my hands slowly, watching her face. Danielle had always been beautiful. Sharp cheekbones, green eyes, the kind of figure that turned heads. But right now, she looked like a cornered animal. "I'm going to unpack," I said finally. "Maybe take a shower, wash off the travel grime." Upstairs, I went straight to Danielle's closet. She was organized to a fault, everything in its place, which made the small black phone hidden behind her shoeboxes stand out like a neon sign. A burner phone. How very spy thriller of her. I turned it on. No password, arrogant or stupid, I couldn't decide which. The text thread that popped up made my blood run cold, then hot, then cold again. Messages from someone named Brandon. Photos I didn't want to see but couldn't look away from. Plans for meetings, complaints about having to be careful, discussions of when I'd be out of town next. But the worst part wasn't Brandon's messages. It was the thread with someone named Macy, Danielle's best friend since college, the one who'd been maid of honor at our wedding, the one I'd always suspected was a bad influence, but tolerated for Danielle's sake. Macy: "Did you tell him about the conference yet?" Danielle: "Not yet. Need to time it right." Macy: "Girl, you're playing with fire. What if he finds out?" Danielle: "He won't. Eric's too trusting. Always has been." Macy: "If you say so. Just remember what I told you about keeping your options open." Danielle: "Brandon's not an option. He's a sure thing." I scrolled back further, finding weeks of conversations. Macy encouraging Danielle to live a little, sharing details of her own affairs, treating marriage vows like suggestions rather than promises. The phone slipped from my hands, clattering to the closet floor. I stared down at it, this small black rectangle that had just blown up my entire world. Downstairs, I could hear Danielle moving around the kitchen, probably starting dinner, playing house, playing wife. I picked up the phone, turned it off, and put it back exactly where I'd found it. Then I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed where some asshole named Brandon had been sleeping, and let the rage build. This wasn't heartbreak. Heartbreak was for people who still had hearts left to break. This was war. I didn't confront Danielle that night, or the next day, or the day after that. Instead, I watched. I learned. I became a student of my wife's betrayal, cataloging every lie, every tell, every moment of deception. The first thing I did was install a small camera in our bedroom. Nothing fancy, just a wireless security cam I picked up at the electronics store, the kind people use to watch their pets while they're at work. I hid it inside an old alarm clock on my nightstand, angled perfectly to capture the entire room. "Home security," I told Danielle, when she noticed me fiddling with equipment. "With all the break-ins in the neighborhood lately, figured we should be careful." She bought it completely. Why wouldn't she? Trusting Eric, just like she'd told Macy. The second thing I did was start paying attention to patterns. Danielle worked late on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or so she said. She had yoga class on Saturday mornings that seemed to run longer and longer each week. She'd started wearing perfume to the grocery store and checking her reflection in every mirror she passed. The third thing I did was call my best friend Will. Will Morrison had been my crew foreman for 8 years, ever since I'd started my kitchen remodeling business. He was built like a linebacker, had hands like ham hocks, and possessed an uncanny ability to see through bullshit. He was also the most loyal friend I'd ever had. "You look like hell," he said when I met him at the Split Rail, our usual after-work bar. "Trouble in paradise?" The Split Rail was the kind of place that existed in every small town. Dark wood, dim lights, locals who'd been drinking at the same stools for 20 years. The bartender, Barb, knew everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing it. "Something like that," I said, ordering a whiskey. "What do you know about a guy named Brandon Miles?" Will's eyebrows shot up. "Brandon Miles? Real estate hotshot with the BMW and the spray tan? What about him?" "Just curious. Heard his name around town." "He's a piece of work," Barb chimed in, polishing a glass. "Thinks he's God's gift to women. Sold the Henderson place last month and spent the whole closing hitting on Mrs. Henderson right in front of her husband." "Sounds like a real charmer," I said. "He comes in here sometimes," Barb continued, warming to the gossip. "Always with a different woman. Never his wife, though. Poor thing probably doesn't know half of what he gets up to." "He's married?" "Separated," Will said. "Has been for months. Lives in that new luxury complex on Elm Street. You know, the one with the doorman and the ridiculous rent." I filed that information away. "What's his story?" "New money," Barb said, with the disdain only a lifelong townie could muster. "Moved here from Boston a few years back, started selling houses to rich folks looking for their authentic Maine experience, made a killing during the pandemic when everyone wanted to escape the city. And now he thinks he owns the town," Will added. "Drives that BMW like he's in a Fast and Furious movie, wears suits that probably cost more than most people make in a month." "Sounds like someone who needs to be taken down a peg," I said casually. Will gave me a sharp look. "Eric, what's this really about?" I met his eyes. "Let's just say I might need a favor soon. Nothing illegal, nothing that'll get us in trouble. But I might need backup." Will nodded slowly. "You know I've got your back, brother. Whatever you need." That night, I tested my new camera system. The feed came through crystal clear on my phone, with audio sharp enough to pick up whispered conversations. I felt like a creep setting up surveillance in my own bedroom, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Danielle was working late again, Thursday night, right on schedule. I sat in my workshop in the garage, pretending to sand cabinet doors while actually monitoring my phone. Around 10:30, I heard the front door open. "Eric?" Danielle called. "I'm home." "In the garage," I called back. "Be in soon." I watched on my phone as she entered our bedroom, moving quickly. She went straight to her closet, pulled out the burner phone, and typed rapidly. Then she stripped out of her work clothes and headed for the shower. 20 minutes later, she emerged in a silk nightgown I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. She sprayed perfume, the expensive stuff she usually saved for special occasions, and arranged herself artfully on the bed with a book. The perfect picture of a wife waiting for her husband to come to bed. I gave it another 10 minutes before heading inside. "How was work?" I asked, kissing the top of her head. "Exhausting. The Morrison account is being difficult about their messaging strategy." She didn't miss a beat, lying as smoothly as breathing. "That's too bad. Maybe tomorrow will be better." "Maybe." She smiled up at me. "I missed you today." The scary thing was, she almost sounded like she meant it. Over the next week, I gathered more intelligence. I followed Brandon's BMW from a distance, learning his routines. He hit the gym every morning at 6, grabbed coffee from the same pretentious cafe afterward, and spent his evenings either at the Split Rail or at his apartment entertaining guests. I also started paying attention to our neighbors. Mrs. Cormier, the 70-something widow who lived next door, spent most of her day watching the street from her front porch. She was the kind of woman who noticed everything and forgot nothing. "Afternoon, Mrs. Cormier," I said one Saturday, finding her in her garden. "Oh, hello, Eric. How's the kitchen business?" "Can't complain. Hey, I wanted to ask, have you noticed anyone hanging around our place when I'm at work? I've been thinking about upgrading our security system." Her eyes lit up. Mrs. Cormier lived for neighborhood drama. "Well, now that you mention it, there has been a fancy car in your driveway a few times. Blue BMW. I figured it was someone from Danielle's work." "Blue BMW, you said?" "Oh yes, very flashy. Not the kind of car you see much in this neighborhood. The driver's a young man, well-dressed. He usually parks right in your spot, bold as brass." "Interesting. What days was this?" "Let me think. Tuesday afternoon last week, Thursday before that, and I'm pretty sure I saw it there this past Tuesday too, around lunchtime." I thanked Mrs. Cormier and made a mental note to bring her a plate of cookies soon. Information like that deserved a reward. That evening, I checked my camera footage from Tuesday. Sure enough, at 12:47 p.m., Brandon Miles had walked into my bedroom like he owned the place. What followed made me want to put my fist through the wall, but I forced myself to watch, to remember, to fuel the fire building in my chest. By the end of the week, I had everything I needed: times, dates, locations, license plate numbers. I knew Brandon's routine better than he did. I knew which of Danielle's friends were covering for her and which ones were probably clueless. I knew that my wife of 12 years had been planning this betrayal for months, maybe longer. Most importantly, I knew exactly how to make them both pay. I was sitting in the split rail Friday night, nursing a beer and finalizing my plans, when Barb leaned across the bar. "You know," she said quietly, "I've been thinking about what you asked me earlier this week. About Brandon Miles." "Yeah? Well, I probably shouldn't say this, but—" She glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "He was in here Tuesday night, bragging to anyone who'd listen about his newest conquest. Some married woman, he said. Kept going on about how easy it was, how the husband was completely clueless." My grip tightened on my beer bottle. Is that so? Made me sick, honestly. I mean, I've seen plenty of cheaters come through here, but this guy was just cruel about it. Like he enjoyed the deception as much as anything else. "Thanks for telling me, Barb." She patted my hand. "Just thought you should know what kind of man he really is." If she only knew how much I already knew. I finished my beer and headed home, where Danielle was waiting with dinner and a smile. She'd made my favorite, pot roast with all the fixings, and had candles lit on the table. "What's the occasion?" I asked. "Do I need an occasion to cook for my husband?" She kissed my cheek, and I smelled that expensive perfume again. We ate dinner like a normal couple. We talked about work, about weekend plans, about whether we should repaint the living room. She laughed at my jokes and asked about my day. She was so good at it, so convincing, that for a moment I almost forgot what I knew. But then her phone buzzed, and I saw that quick, guilty glance, that little flutter of excitement she tried to hide. "Work email," she said, not looking at the screen. "At 9 p.m. on a Friday?" You know how it is. PR never sleeps. I nodded and smiled and helped her clear the dishes. But inside I was counting down the hours until I could put my plan into motion. The game was about to begin, and this time I was going to be the one holding all the cards. Monday morning I called in sick to work. Will covered for me, asking no questions. He knew something big was brewing, and he trusted me enough to let it play out. Danielle left for work at her usual time, kissing me goodbye and telling me to get some rest. "I hope you feel better, honey. Maybe I'll pick up some soup on my way home." "That sounds perfect," I said, coughing for effect. "Love you. Love you too." The words felt like ash in my mouth. 30 minutes after she left, I was in my truck, following Brandon's BMW at a careful distance. He hit the gym right on schedule, spent an hour inside, then headed to his usual coffee shop. I parked across the street and watched him through the window, chatting up the young barista like he was God's gift to womankind. At 10:15, he headed to his real estate office. I drove to the luxury apartment complex on Elm Street and found his BMW in its assigned spot. The building was exactly what I'd expected, all glass and steel, trying too hard to look sophisticated. I walked into the lobby like I belonged there. The doorman barely looked up from his newspaper. "Excuse me," I said, approaching his desk. "I'm here to see Brandon Miles about a property listing. He said to meet him here, but I think I'm early." The doorman glanced at a schedule. "Mr. Miles isn't in right now. He's usually back around noon." "That's fine. Mind if I wait in the parking garage? I've got some calls to make." He waved me toward the elevator. "Garage is level B1. Perfect. In the garage, I found Brandon's BMW and got to work. Nothing illegal, nothing that would cause permanent damage. Just a little creative maintenance that would send a message. I loosened his valve stems just enough to create a slow leak. By the time he got home tonight, all 4 tires would be nearly flat. Then I took out a tube of lipstick, one of Danielle's old ones I'd grabbed from her makeup drawer, and wrote a message on his windshield. "Your wife called." The beauty of it was the ambiguity. Brandon was separated, not divorced. His wife could legitimately call him about any number of things, but a guilty conscience would make him paranoid. Next, I drove to Danielle's office building. Her company, Parker and Associates, no relation to her parents despite the name, occupied the 3rd floor of a converted Victorian downtown. I knew the layout from the Christmas parties I'd attended over the years. I also knew that Danielle's assistant, Tessa, was usually at lunch between noon and 1. At 12:30, I walked into the office carrying a bouquet of flowers and wearing my most charming smile. "Can I help you?" asked the receptionist, a young woman I didn't recognize. "I'm Eric Talbot, Danielle's husband. I wanted to surprise her with these." I held up the flowers. "Is she in?" "Oh, how sweet! She's in a client meeting right now, but she should be free in about 20 minutes. Would you like to wait?" "Actually, could I just leave these on her desk? I want it to be a complete surprise." The receptionist hesitated. "I'm not supposed to let people back there without—" "I understand completely," I said, pulling out my wallet. "Here's my driver's license. I'm her husband of 12 years. You can call her if you want, but I was hoping to keep it a surprise." She looked at my ID, then at my face, then back at the ID. "Well, I guess it would be okay, just for a minute." "You're an angel. Thank you." Danielle's office was exactly as I remembered, neat, organized with family photos, strategically placed to project the image of a happily married woman. I set the flowers on her desk with a note. "Just because I love you. Eric." Then I got to work. I knew Danielle kept personal items in her desk drawer. What I was looking for was her backup phone charger. She was paranoid about her battery dying and any other evidence of her double life. In the bottom drawer, jackpot. Along with the charger, I found a small notebook filled with what looked like appointment times and initials. BM, 2000 appeared frequently, always on days when Danielle claimed to be working late or meeting clients. I photographed every page with my phone, then put everything back exactly as I'd found it. The whole operation took less than 5 minutes. "All set?" the receptionist asked as I headed for the door. "Perfect. Thanks again for your help. Danielle's lucky to work with such nice people." That evening, I was back home in bed with a box of tissues and a thermometer when Danielle arrived with soup from my favorite deli. "How are you feeling?" she asked, sitting on the edge of the bed and feeling my forehead. "A little better. The rest helped." I coughed weakly. "How was your day?" "Busy. The Morrison account is still being difficult." She paused. "Oh, and thank you for the flowers. They were beautiful." "Flowers?" She looked confused. "The ones you left on my desk? With the note?" I sat up, looking genuinely puzzled. "Honey, I've been in bed all day. I didn't leave you any flowers." The color drained from her face. But, but the note was signed from you, and the receptionist said my husband dropped them off. That's weird. What did this guy look like? I didn't see him. Sarah said he showed ID and everything. Danielle was starting to look genuinely rattled. Who would pretend to be you? I shrugged. Maybe it was a mistake. Wrong office. But I could see the wheels turning in her head. Someone had been in her office, someone who knew enough about her to pose as her husband. Someone who might have seen things they shouldn't have seen. I'm sure it's nothing, I said, lying back down. Probably just a mix-up. But Danielle spent the rest of the evening checking her phone obsessively and jumping at every sound. The paranoia was setting in, just as I'd hoped. Around 10 p.m., her burner phone buzzed. I pretended to be asleep as she crept out of bed to check it. Through barely open eyes, I watched her face go white as she read whatever message had come through. She typed back quickly, then deleted the entire conversation. But I'd already seen enough to know my little automotive prank had hit its target. The next morning, Danielle was quiet over breakfast. She kept glancing at me like she was trying to read my mind. Everything okay? I asked. Fine, just tired. Maybe you should take it easy today. Cancel any evening meetings. She looked up sharply. Why would you say that? Just a suggestion. You seem stressed. I'm not stressed. But she was. I could see it in the tension in her shoulders, the way she gripped her coffee mug too tightly, the frequency with which she checked her phone. After she left for work, I called Will. How'd it go yesterday? He asked. Phase 1 complete. Ready for Phase 2? What do you need? Meet me at the split rail tonight around 8, and bring your camera, the good one you use for job site documentation. Eric, what exactly are we doing here? We're going to give a cheating bastard and his married girlfriend a night they'll never forget. Will was quiet for a moment. You sure about this path you're going down? Never been more sure of anything in my life. Then I'm in, all the way. That night, I told Danielle I was feeling better and wanted to grab a beer with Will. Guy time, I said. You know how it is. Of course, have fun. She kissed me goodbye, but I noticed she was already reaching for her phone before I'd even left the room. At the split rail, Will and I took a corner booth with a clear view of the door. Barb brought us beers without being asked. So what's the play? Will asked quietly. We wait, and when our targets arrive, we document everything. Targets? Brandon, Miles, and my wife. Will's face darkened. Ah, hell, Eric. I'm sorry, man. Don't be sorry. Be ready. We didn't have to wait long. At 8:47, Brandon's BMW pulled into the parking lot. Through the window, I could see Danielle in the passenger seat, laughing at something he'd said. They walked in together, not touching but clearly comfortable with each other. Brandon had his hand on the small of her back as he guided her to a booth on the far side of the bar. Intimate, but not obvious. Cocky bastard, Will muttered, bringing her to a place where people know you. That's exactly what I was counting on. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Will did the same with his professional camera, using the zoom lens to capture clear shots of their faces, their body language, the way Danielle leaned in close when Brandon whispered something in her ear. They ordered drinks, wine for her, whiskey for him, and settled in for what looked like a long conversation. Every few minutes, one of them would glance around the bar, checking to see if anyone was watching. They were too focused on the other patrons to notice us in our dark corner. This is painful to watch, Will said after 20 minutes. It gets worse. As if on cue, Brandon reached across the table and took Danielle's hand. She didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her hand over and intertwined their fingers. Will's camera clicked rapidly. Got it. Good. Now we wait for the real show. Another 10 minutes passed before they got up to leave. Brandon threw a 20 on the table and helped Danielle with her coat. As they headed for the door, he leaned down and whispered something in her ear that made her laugh. Just before they reached the exit, I stood up. Danielle? She froze, turning slowly. When she saw me, the blood drained from her face. Eric, what are you… I thought you were… having a beer with Will, like I told you. I walked over, smiling pleasantly. Fancy seeing you here. Brandon stepped slightly in front of Danielle, puffing up his chest. Is there a problem here? No problem at all. I extended my hand. You must be Brandon. I'm Eric, Danielle's husband. He hesitated, then shook my hand. His grip was firm, trying to establish dominance. I squeezed back just hard enough to let him know I wasn't intimidated. Nice to meet you, he said. Danielle was just telling me about some properties in the area. Business meeting. At 9 p.m. in a bar? I raised an eyebrow. You real estate folks sure keep interesting hours. Danielle found her voice. We were discussing the Henderson property. Brandon thinks it might be perfect for the Morrison account. The Morrison account, I repeated slowly. The one that's been giving you so much trouble? Yes. Funny thing about that. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to a photo I'd taken earlier. I was talking to Jim Morrison this afternoon about a kitchen job, and he mentioned his account with your company was actually going great. Said you'd been doing excellent work. Danielle's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Must be a different Morrison account, Brandon said smoothly. Common name. Must be. I smiled at both of them. Well, don't let me interrupt your business meeting. Danielle, I'll see you at home. Don't be too late. I walked back to Will, leaving them standing by the door. Through the window, I watched them have a heated, whispered conversation beside Brandon's BMW before finally getting in and driving away. That was cold, brother, Will said. Effective, but cold. This is just the beginning, I said, finishing my beer. By the time I'm done with them, they'll wish they'd never met each other. Barb appeared at our table. Everything okay over here? That looked tense? Just fine, Barb, just fine. But as I said it, I was already planning my next move. The gloves were off now. Danielle knew I was suspicious, and Brandon knew I existed. The careful game of cat and mouse was over. Now it was time for open warfare, and